Let's do it. This video is a follow-up to the one we did with Benjamin Netanyahu, also about Saturn and Aries. In that video, I discussed Saturn's transit in Aries and how dangerous it is for his sun in Libra to be opposing. And as we can see here, Vladimir Putin is also sun in Libra, but unlike Netanyahu, has a Saturn in Libra as well. That means that unlike Netanyahu, he has a Saturn in Libra. Last Saturn return he had was around 2010, and he will have a 180-degree harvest to this around 2026, coming on to 2020. Now, I came across this comment here, which I thought was very interesting. Benjamin Netanyahu's everything the media wanted you to believe Vladimir Putin. And then the response said, yes, the media is right about him. If you're pumping for either of these genocidalists, you need to rethink. And I thought that was crazy. Not because I agree or disagree with the statement, could care less, but they both have very similar charts. As you can see, both are Libras born with the Neptunian alien construct conjunction. And what are the odds that two leaders whose sun is in Libra ruled by Venus have Venus on their rising sign? Furthermore, we do see the presence of Pluto on the MC and then Saturn on his MC, designating the influence of planets next to the MC, like Michael Jordan with Jupiter on his MC and LeBron James with Mars on his MC in Pisces. Regardless, it's important to remind you that just because Saturn transits opposite your sun doesn't mean you're gonna die, doesn't mean that you're gonna get assassinated. We just have countless examples of this actually happening in real. Now let's take it even deeper, shall we? Here is the chart of 2026. When Saturn is going to be 13 degrees Aries. And here's the chart of 1996, when Saturn was last on Aries and the South Node. You know that 1996 was when Israel had drafted their clean break strategy. And I want you to look at Middle Eastern politics from the 90s up until now and see really the legacy of this clean break strategy. Mind you, the focus back then was on Iraq and Syria, and well, we know how they turned out. This is the chart 2025, Saturn in Aries. This is actually today. As you can see, we want to look at Uranus at the end of Taurus, Mercury and Jupiter in Cancer, Pluto in Aquarius. Here's the chart of 1995 with Saturn that was getting ready to go into Aries and Jupiter that was exactly on the Islamic Republic of Iran's rising and the North Node that was in Scorpio. Well, we know in 1995, the United States imposed sanctions on Iran. This was when Khomeini was ruling after succeeding in 89, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune in Capricorn. Specifically, March 15th, 1995, which was the date I showed you earlier, where, oh my gosh, in response for nuclear programming in Iran. Looks like this is not new by any means. It's important to know I'm not making any point against or for Iran, Israel, or America. It's just important for you to see the correlation of these dates as they relate to now, mainly to show you how all of this is coinciding with Saturn returning back through Pisces and Aries. Looks like it's happening again. Now, as we can see, this is Israel's chart. Israel has Mars, Saturn, Pluto, and Moon in Leo. Jesus Christ. You can see Bill Clinton's chart, all Leo. Okay, and also see J.D. Vance's chart. This, very questionable. I wonder if that's behind the people who passed shortly after you saw him. But we have more of Leo right here. What do we see? J.D. Vance is not for America being tricked into, and so is fellow former Leo president Bill Clinton. Surprise, surprise. There was literally no point with that. I just wanted to show you the correlation. I don't think that means causation. I just thought that was funny. I wanted to share. However, it's important I remind you of what I mentioned last video. Ali Khamenei has Sun, Moon, Saturn in Aries, all right? Powerful individuality and rulership, even though in its fall, is in Aries. And speaking of the fall in Aries, Saturn is in its fall. okay, when it's in Aries, which gives me the impression that we are witnessing a regime fall and subsequent change for Iran. The reason why I'm saying this, I'm not saying this in favor that Iran falls and has a regime change, or I'm not saying this against Iran. I'm saying we're going to see it. And that brings me to where we'll close the chart of Iran. The North Node is aspecting its God of War point. Mars is getting ready to go to its MC when it reaches Libra, and it's going over its Saturn and North Node. But what we really want to look at is its Aries sun. That Saturn is going to be transiting through next year, 2026. Is that when we're going to get the first new? I'm not asking that new question because of this. It was just a random question. But Saturn going through Aries, and specifically Iran's sun, suggests that they are going to experience a new karmic cycle, whether through regime change, and if you take into account the conflict within the country, as not everyone is a fan of the leader there, it is somewhat possible. The reason why this is also very interesting is that this chart is not the chart of Persia. It's not the chart of Iran as it initially established. This is the 1979 Saturn North Node conjunction in Virgo of the Islamic Republic and Revolution, rather, of Iran. If you were born in 1979, you have Saturn and North Node in Virgo. It'd be interesting for those of you born in 79. Once it goes in the 80s, Saturn goes into Libra, meets up with Pluto, and subsequently Mars and Jupiter. So I would love your comments and thoughts below. Uranus has opposed its Uranus in Taurus. Jupiter through Gemini is in its 7th house of open enemies. But we want to really look at what is Saturn's transit through the Islamic Revolution of Iran's sun going to look like. That's not to say that Iran doesn't have allies. So I don't want to just say, oh, this means that they're going to fall or their regime is going to change. But to me, that makes sense as to how this Saturn transit may look, especially post-Saturn opposition, where now in Aries, it's going to begin to transform its karma and legacy. So is this the end of the Islamist regime in Iran, making way for a brand new regime? Or is this Iran's comeback? I want to leave that possibility open. I don't want anyone to think that I'm biased towards or against, because that does not help when really breaking down information like this that teaches you that there are forces beyond just the politics and leaders who have their feelings on how these things should be resolved. Regardless, like we mentioned before, the leader of Russia is a reaper. He's a gangster. All right, cold-blooded killer. Okay, you're not playing around. So we need to see over the next year or two, as Saturn will make a full opposition to his sun and Saturn next year, what that really means. And so I want you to comment down below. What is that going to look like? Is this going to be victory and success as he harvests the Saturn return? Is this going to be an element of danger? Both him and Netanyahu are engaged in war. So the concept that they may get assassinated or killed isn't really far off, but it doesn't mean that they may get killed. It could be victory. All right. So we'll see what that looks like. I have no hate or love or am a fan or against any of these people. I think it's really weird to get too emotionally invested for or against versus just watching this political theater play out as is orchestrated literally by the stars. Peace.